Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is not a video you watch and forget a few minutes later. This is not something you play in the background just for entertainment. If you truly understand what you are about to hear, it can change the way you study, the way you think, and the results you get. So before we go any further, I want you to do something simple, but important. Take a notebook, take a pen, do it now. Don't just listen. Be ready to think, to reflect, and to write things down. Because this is not temporary motivation. This is a shift in mindset. Most students believe that high achievers are somehow different. They think toppers are more intelligent, more gifted, or have something special that they don't. And because of this belief, they limit themselves before they even begin. They accept being average without realizing it. But this is where everything goes wrong. Toppers are not born different. They sit in the same classrooms. They study the same subjects. They have the same 24 hours in a day as you do. The real difference is not intelligence. The real difference is how they think, how they study, and what they do every single day. When you change your mindset, you change your actions. And when your actions change, your results begin to change. But that only happens if you take this seriously. From this moment on, stop telling yourself that you are not good enough. Start understanding that what you really need is not more talent. You need the right system. And once you truly understand this, you will never look at studying the same way again. Once you understand that the real difference is not intelligence, but how you study every single day, then the very first thing you need to change is how you start your study session. And the truth is, most students start the wrong way. They sit down and tell themselves, I will study a lot today. It sounds determined, it sounds serious, but in reality, it's a vague goal. There's no clarity, no direction, no clear finish line. And because of that, the brain feels overwhelmed. You don't know where to begin, and you don't know when you're done. As a result, you waste time thinking, get distracted easily, and feel tired without actually achieving much. This is where the real difference begins. A top student never studies like that. They don't rely on big, unclear goals. They break everything down into something small, something simple, something clear. For example, instead of saying, I will study this chapter, they say, I will fully understand this concept and solve 5 related questions. That's it. But that small shift changes everything, because your brain does not like big tasks. Big tasks feel heavy. They feel difficult. They create resistance. But small tasks feel manageable. They feel possible. And because of that, you start faster, you focus better, and when you complete it, you feel a real sense of progress. And that feeling matters. That small win gives you energy. It pushes you to do one more small task, and then another, and another. No pressure, no stress. But by the end, you've accomplished far more than you expected. Now imagine 2 students. One studies for 3 hours with no clear goal, reading randomly, forgetting most of it. The other studies for just 45 minutes with a clear target, full focus, and deep understanding. Be honest. Who is actually improving? So from today, don't open your book immediately. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what exactly am I going to finish? Write it down. Make it small, make it clear, and most importantly, complete it. Because every small target you finish doesn't just improve your study, it builds your confidence. And when that confidence grows day by day, you slowly become someone you once thought you could never be. Once you start studying with small, clear goals and complete them step by step, you begin to feel real progress. But right at that moment, a very common mistake appears, and if you don't notice it, it can quietly destroy everything you've built. That mistake is learning from too many sources. Many students believe that the more books they read and the more teachers they follow, the better they will become. So they keep searching for new materials, jumping from one video to another, from one book to the next. At first, it feels like they are learning a lot, but in reality, they are only collecting information, not truly understanding it. And what happens next? Everything becomes messy. The same concept is explained in different ways. Every source has its own style. Every teacher has a different approach. Slowly, your mind becomes confused. You no longer know which one is right. You begin to doubt yourself. You study more, but understand less. You try harder, but your results don't match your effort. And over time, this doesn't just hurt your performance, it slowly destroys your confidence. This is exactly where the gap between average students and top students becomes clear. Top students don't chase quantity. They choose one main source, one book, one teacher they trust, and they stay with it. But more importantly, they don't just study it once. They go back. They read again. They think again. They go deeper until everything becomes truly clear. They don't ask, how many sources have I covered? They ask, how deeply do I understand this? Because they understand something powerful. Knowing more does not make you better. Understanding deeply does. When you go deep into one source, knowledge starts to connect. Everything becomes logical. You remember longer, you feel more confident, and most importantly, you no longer feel lost when facing problems or exams. So if you've already started with small, focused goals, protect that focus. Don't break it by chasing too many things. Choose one source that works for you. Trust it. Stay with it long enough to truly understand. Because in learning, depth will always beat quantity. And once you go deep enough, you will realize you don't need more, you just need to understand better. Once you've chosen the right source and committed to going deep into it, you will start to understand things more clearly. But then, a very familiar problem appears. You study something today, you understand it well, but a few days later, everything feels faded. You start forgetting, and you ask yourself, why did I study this? Yet I can't remember it. This is not because you are not capable. It is not because your memory is weak. This is simply how the brain works. Most students make the mistake of treating studying as a one-time action. They finish a chapter, feel like they understand it, and then move on to the next without ever coming back. And over time, the knowledge slowly slips away without them realizing it. When they return, it feels like starting all over again. That is why short-term revision is so powerful. Short-term revision does not mean waiting until exam time to review everything. It means coming back to the material early, right when it starts to fade just a little. This is the golden moment. When you revise at this point, your brain receives a clear signal. This information matters. Keep it. And each time you return, the memory becomes deeper and stronger. Remember this simple but powerful rule. Studying once helps you understand, but revising multiple times helps you remember. Imagine writing something on sand. At first it looks clear, but after a light breeze, it begins to disappear. If you write over it again, and again, and again, the mark becomes deeper and harder to erase. Your memory works the same way. Top students never believe that one time is enough. They return to the material multiple times, but not passively. They ask themselves, what do I still remember? What is still weak? Can I explain this clearly? This active process strengthens their memory. So if you have already gone deep into one source, don't let that effort go to waste. Go back, reinforce it, lock it in. Because studying without revision is like pouring water into a leaking bucket. But revising the right way is how you keep everything you worked for, turning knowledge into something that truly belongs to you. Once you start revising your knowledge in a smart and timely way, you will realize something important. Simply rereading is not enough. You can look at a page and feel that it's familiar, but the moment you close the book, you struggle to recall it clearly or explain it in your own words. That's when you need a more powerful step, making your own notes. Many students skip this step. They think taking notes is a waste of time, or they rely on someone else's notes because it feels faster. But this is a major mistake, because when you only read, you are receiving information passively. Your brain recognizes it, but it doesn't truly process it deeply. But when you start writing, everything changes. You are forced to think, what is the main idea here? What really matters? Can I explain this more simply? And through that process, you don't just study, you begin to understand. Not only do you understand, but you also organize the knowledge in your own way. And that is the real difference. Top students don't take notes to make them look beautiful. They take notes to make things clear. They turn long chapters into short, sharp ideas. They transform complexity into simplicity. They create a map that helps them see the entire topic clearly. When you have your own notes, revision becomes much easier. You don't need to go back to a heavy textbook every time. You only need to review what you have already filtered, understood, and simplified. This saves time, reduces pressure, and increases efficiency. More importantly, making your own notes reveals your weaknesses. When you cannot write something clearly, it means you don't truly understand it yet. And once you see that gap, you have the chance to fix it. Remember this. Writing is not copying. Writing is processing. And when you process information, you remember it longer. So if you have already studied deeply and revised the right way, take it one step further. Don't leave knowledge trapped inside the book. Make it yours. Rewrite it. Simplify it. Shape it. Because when knowledge passes through your own thinking and is written in your own words, it no longer fades easily. It stays with more clarity, more depth, and far more power. Once you learn how to create your own notes and begin to see knowledge more clearly, you will realize another important truth. Not everything has the same value. Yet many students still fall into a familiar mistake. They study based on mood. They open a book and study whatever appears in front of them. They start with what feels easy, what they like, or simply what they feel like doing at that moment. And this turns studying into something random. And when your study is random, your results will be random too. You can study a lot. You can work very hard and still not get the results you want. Not because you lack effort, but because your effort is placed in the wrong areas. This is where you need to change your approach. Study what matters first. Studying smart is not about doing more. It's about doing the right things at the right time. In every subject, there are always key concepts, foundational ideas, and topics that appear frequently in exams. These are high-value areas. If you master these first, you are already ahead of many others. Top students think this way. Before they begin, they don't just ask, "What should I study today?" They ask, "What is the most important thing I should do first?" That one question creates a powerful shift. Think of your energy like money. You wouldn't spend it all on small, unimportant things and ignore what truly matters, right? So why do that with your time and focus? Your best hours, when your mind is sharp and focused, are your most valuable asset. And those hours should be spent on the most important, most challenging, and highest impact topics. When you take control of these first, you feel more confident, more prepared, and far less stressed as exams approach. But if you keep choosing only the easy parts, the small tasks, you will always feel incomplete. Deep inside, there will always be a quiet pressure, because you know the most important work is still undone. So from today, stop studying randomly. Start treating your study like a strategy. Identify what matters most. Know what builds your foundation. Focus on what creates the biggest results. Because one truth is clear: not everything is equally important. And when you focus on the right things first, you don't just save time, you accelerate your entire journey. Once you've learned to prioritize what truly matters, you're already on the right path. But there is still one final barrier, the biggest one that holds most people back: procrastination. You know what you need to study. You know what is important. You may even have a clear plan. But then you tell yourself, I'll do it later. I'll start when I feel like it. Tomorrow is fine. And just like that, your work keeps getting pushed further and further away. It may seem small, but in reality, this is a very dangerous pattern. Every time you procrastinate, your brain is learning something. Avoiding difficult things feels good, and when this behavior repeats again and again, it becomes a habit. Slowly, not only big tasks, but even small ones start to feel heavy. You feel more resistance, more laziness, and starting becomes harder and harder. That's why so many people say, I want to study, but I just can't start. The problem is not your ability. The problem is that you've trained your brain to delay too many times. Top students understand one powerful truth: starting is the hardest part. That's why they don't wait for motivation. They don't wait for the perfect mood. They rely on one thing: action. They decide a time, and when that time comes, they begin. Whether they feel like it or not, whether they feel ready or not, and something surprising happens. After just a few minutes, everything begins to shift. The discomfort fades. Focus increases. The brain starts to lock in. This is momentum, the state where once you begin, continuing becomes much easier. That's why this insight is so important. You don't need motivation to start. You need to start to create motivation. When you take action, even a small step, you break the cycle of procrastination. You send a signal to your brain: we can do this. And from that moment, confidence begins to grow. So if you already know what you need to study and what to prioritize, stop overthinking. Don't wait for inspiration. Don't wait for perfection. Just start. Because the moment you begin, you're not just studying, you're changing who you are. And when you repeat that every day, you stop being someone who delays. You become someone who takes action, and that is where all results begin. Once you understand that procrastination is the biggest barrier and that action is what creates motivation, then there is one final truth you must remember. Success does not come from moments of intense inspiration. It does not come from watching more videos, listening to more advice, or waiting for the perfect day to begin. Success is built from small actions, repeated every single day. Many people watch content like this and feel highly motivated. They tell themselves, tomorrow I will change. But when tomorrow comes, everything goes back to the same pattern. Not because they don't want to change, but because they rely on feelings instead of actions. And feelings are unstable. Today, you might feel driven and focused. Tomorrow, you might feel tired and unmotivated. If you depend on emotions, you will never be consistent. But if you build actions, no matter how small, no matter how simple, and repeat them daily, that is what creates real change. You don't need to study 10 hours a day to become better. You just need one small target, one focused session, one quick revision, one clear page of notes, and do it every day. It sounds simple, but that simplicity, repeated consistently, is where the real power lies. Think back to everything you've learned. Set small goals, study deeply from one source, revise at the right time, make your own notes, focus on what matters most, and start immediately without delay. None of these work if you do them once. They only become powerful when they become habits. And here's the truth you must understand. You don't become great in the exam hall. You don't become a topper in a single moment. You become that person through daily actions, through small decisions, through every time you choose to act instead of delay. Every day, you become a little more serious, a little more focused, a little more disciplined. And one day, you will look back and realize you have changed. Not because of one big breakthrough, but because you never stopped. So don't wait anymore. Don't look for more motivation. Start today. Do one small thing, and tomorrow, repeat it. Because success is not something you achieve in the future. It is something you build every single day, starting right now.